Good morning. My name is Uenking, and I am a student in the Department of Psychology at Liberty University pursuing his PhD in Industrial Organizational Psychology. The purpose of this research proposal is to inform and possibly investigate the driving forces behind undergraduate student motivation. This presentation was made for the psychology course PSYC815. In previous presentations, we reviewed a sample of the literature on the construct of student motivation. We will now focus on the purpose of the current study. As we have discussed, the prior research on student motivation indicates that student motivation is impacted by a plethora of situational factors. Lin and colleagues found in their cross-cultural study that extrinsic motivation is not incompatible with intrinsic motivation. This finding is paramount and will hopefully be explained more from the findings of the current study. The overall research question is, does the dichotomy between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation influence student academic performance via their final course grade? The two main hypotheses for the current study are exemplified in the null and alternative hypotheses. The null hypothesis for the current study is that there will be no statistically significant difference between final course grade between students who are intrinsically motivated and those students who are extrinsically motivated. The alternative hypothesis is reflected in that there would be a statistically significant difference between final course grades between students who are intrinsically motivated and those students who are extrinsically motivated. We will now briefly touch on the section pertaining to variables. The independent variable is participant scores on the Motivated Strategies for Learning questionnaire, also known as the MSLQ, which was developed by Pintrick and DeGroot in 1990. The dependent variable is exemplified in final course grade for student participants. Now we will dive into more of the methodology of the current study, starting with the participants section. Participants will be sourced from the Liberty University Undergraduate Psychology Department. A minimum of 30 participants will be asked to participate given the nature of this correlational research. Participants will be protected given that the current study abides by the APA, Ethical Principles of Psychologists, and Code of Conduct, specifically Section 4, which pertains to privacy and confidentiality, and Section 8, which pertains to research and publication. Student participants will be provided extra credit in a psychology-based course at Liberty University. Continuing on with the procedures, a consent form must be signed first for participation for the current study. Students will then fill out sections of the MSLQ, specifically the intrinsic goal orientation and extrinsic goal orientation scales, prior to the beginning of the first examination or course assessment. Student participant progress will be monitored over the course of the semester by the primary researcher and associated faculty. Once final grades have been submitted, the researcher will analyze the responses to the MSLQ and final course grades to conduct a Pearson's R correlation to evaluate the relationship between the variables. Participants will then be provided with a debriefing form at the conclusion of the study. Now to elaborate on the measure for the current study, the MSLQ is a self-report that consists of 56 items that follow a 7-point Likert scale, with responses being sourced from 1, meaning not at all true of me, to 7, very true of me. As previously stated, the independent variable is participant responses to the sections of the intrinsic goal orientation and extrinsic goal orientation scales of the MSLQ. Focusing on these responses from these specific scales of the measure will help to highlight student motivational type, whether intrinsic or extrinsic. The National Center for Education Research proposes grants each year for research opportunities that are grounded in the field of education. The cognition and student learning topic, also known as the CASL, is a pathway that is being explored by the researcher. The CASL supports research in the field of cognition, expanding how the mind works to inform and improve education in reading, writing, mathematics, science, and study skills. This research grant opportunity is certainly applicable given the purpose of the current study to better understand the cognitive mechanisms behind student motivation and student academic performance. As we conclude, this research will add additional information to the wealth of literature on the topic of student motivation and its influence on student academic performance. The results of this research will guide leadership decision-making processes to help to best optimize student academic performance in the higher education setting. An investigation into how intrinsic and extrinsic motivation influences academic performance via final course grades could present beneficial applications in the field of education. Thank you for your time and your consideration on this matter.